Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 Speedrun Guide or Walkthrough. We are going to be making our way through an area that can be quite technical, difficult, and challenging, and that is the combination Hel and Asgard level. For the most part, things can be pretty straightforward, but there are a couple of critical areas that you need to pay very close attention to. Now, the first is more particularly for the new game run, and that is when you first make it to Hel, you will want to interact with this shield emblem and make any level ups, skill tree adjustments, and ISO swaps that you want. And one of the critical areas of that is swapping the ISO that you found or should have grabbed from the Wakanda section of the game after you got past that first laser gate. If you missed that, I did cover it in last week's video, so you can go back through and review where that is located, because that is a very good piece of ISO 8 that you will want to equip to your team for a new game run. For new game plus runs, though, you just want to press on. And with either version of the game, or the speed run, you have Nightcrawler, who is going to be a huge asset for this section of the run. Now, all of these areas that we're going into right now are optional combat, and you will want to be cautious of these pools of ooze, as Thor outlines them as, because they deal constant damage to you, and if they get the spouts up here that connect into you, they will knock you down, and that is a time loss. Now, this section of the game is pretty straightforward for a new game run, but something you need to be careful about for new game plus is using Thanos' soul siphon here. Now, we covered a section of the game where you can have problems using Thanos' soul siphon in the raft portion of the game, and something similar can happen here, but the bad part about that is it's not something that you can correct if it does happen to you. It is a forced reset, at least of the save point, if not of the run and its entirety. If you set up a soul siphon here in the middle, I have seen it to the point where these pillars, which is where some of the opponents will jump down from the top of, I have had opponents get stuck up there on 2 separate occasions. So you will need to be very cautious with that. And you can kind of see, if I come back this way, you can see the platform there up top that they would get caught on. There is no character in the entire game that has a hitbox that reaches that high vertically, so that would be a forced restart if you do happen to get caught in that. But that did not happen to us here, so we can continue to press on and avoid any of the issues here. Now, there's 2 different paths that you can take, and what I recommend, because you'll be able to have Nightcrawler for either one, is take the high path initially, come up that little step that takes you back up towards the high path after you drop back down, but use it to hop over the pool of ooze that's there. Now here, you do need to be very careful because there are 4 grunts that are right here in this section of the bridge, and these appear to be optional opponents to fight against, but they are indeed opponents that are required for you to defeat, based off of the mandatory combat at the end of the bridge segment. So take a moment and take care of them there, or you will have to double back. And if you notice here on the right-hand side of the screen, it says slay 20 Viking souls. You already have 4 of those accounted for, indicating that the 4 souls that we ran into on the edge of that bridge are counted in the overall total of opponents that we need to make our way through here. There's a little animation that allows you to get through, or as that gate opens, and that gives you ample opportunity to switch back over to Nightcrawler. There's a cutscene that you can quick skip through, and then make your way into Castle Hela. Now, through these first doors, you will be confronted with 3 different opponents that you will have to conduct battle with. There's no way around that because you cannot get enough damage or enough progress in to get through that door without these demons spawning in. But as soon as you take the 3 of them out, you'll have these doors open back up again. Now, this section, what is required of you is you need to make your way to the top, all the way over here to this flame. There's a very narrow window there that you'll have to make your way through, and then you need to go back up to the top, and that will bring you to this final chamber area where you can hang a hard right into the throne room, which is where we first meet Hela, but more specifically where we are introduced to Surtur. We're going to want to skip through this, and this is where the strategy differs based off of a new game run versus a new game plus run. I've talked about the new game runs where Hulk is a very good combatant for this, and if you've listened to some of my opinions on that, you should have your unstoppable charge lined up to the point where you can burst through Surtur's stagger bar very quickly like I just demonstrated. Yes, it is going to leave you a little hindered going into the next section of the fight, which is combating against Surtur on the Rainbow Bridge, but it is the fastest method that I have discovered for a new game run specifically. For a new game plus run, I really like using Dr. Doom with his Loyal Servant and Spark of Genius ability because it allows you to melt through that gauge twice as fast as you would be able to normally, because you have 2 sets of those lightning bolts or those genius sparks attacking into your opponent. Now here, there is a definite benefit to having Black Panther on the team, because what you will discover is Black Panther will make very quick work of Surtur and his health by using the Vibranium Slash. However, Dr. Doom is another fantastic option here, as well as Hulk, especially in the new game runs for Hulk there. But right there, we're going to make our way through Surtur very quickly, and that is going to be a longer combat section for a new game run, but that is just kind of standard with it. Now, you'll want to make your way down the Bifrost, a couple of jumps here with Nightcrawler. That's going to trigger a cutscene that you will need to skip, and then you can make your way further on down this Bifrost bridge, getting ahead of the splash damage from these missiles as you do so. And there is pathing that you can do that really allows you to make your way around that. You're just going to need to be cautious. Now, there's a series of mandatory combat sections that you will need to take out in order to make your way through into the Asgard proper here. And the first area, it's pretty straightforward for both runs. The second area, you do have to wait for this piece of dialogue in this miniature cutscene to activate, because all of the opponents are immune to damage in that stage until Thor has given his input. From there, you can make your way right back through them again, which does quite well. Now, here in this section, it's a large courtyard that is circular. This can be particularly difficult in a new game run because there's a little bit of circular movement going around to hit into all of the opponents as needed. In a new game plus run, you can have a little bit easier of a time by soul siphoning the opponents into basically the same area and then going around and finishing them off. It looks like we have one guy that's stuck here in the corner along with these missiles. And again, that's a fairly straightforward fight segment. That is going to take a lot longer when you are in a new game run as opposed to a new game plus run. Here, we're going to do the same thing with Thanos, the Soul Siphon. It seems that like it wastes time in setting this up, but it is leagues faster because of being able to draw all of your opponents into one central location. Now, this is the last mandatory combat section. You can tell because over here on the left, there's a corridor that you will need to double back into, which is going to actually get you into the Asgardian Palace. So you'll want to make your way down across this area as quickly as you can. Your teammates will teleport to catch up with you, interact with this terminal, and then bank a hard right and continue down this section. Now, there's a couple of areas here that I feel are deliberately made more beneficial from a storytelling standpoint, and I even think that it was potentially meant to be mandatory to free all of these Asgardian warriors, but in reality, you can just skip right past them all the way down to this bottom corridor, which brings you into Loki's holding cell, or the cell that he's being held in. That activates a cutscene that you'll need to skip. You'll then need to interact with Loki, skip his dialogue, and come here into this next chamber where you are going to have mandatory combat. Again, for New Game Plus runs, I highly recommend using Thanos Infinite here because, again, you can draw all of your opponents into one central location, which allows you to quickly make your way through the required combat in order to unlock these doors after a quick little fade to black reset and a conversation with Loki. Now here, in a new game run, it may be beneficial to use a character that can fly, as they have a little bit of an easier time with these steps than a teleporting character does, because teleporting doesn't allow you to get around these as easily. But you will want to have someone who teleports down this way because, again, it's just a much faster traversal option. And let's make our way through that laser grid. These are the last couple of laser grids that you can do, and if you time yourself correctly, you can roll around that first one. You'll need to wait for this one to deactivate so you can make your way through it. Here, it's just a matter of timing your jump to be consistent with the opening that's in the middle of that grid, and then you just have to time that last one on the upward swing. And that is the last of the laser grids in the new game area. There's some significantly more difficult laser grids present in the Pearl, or the epilogue, made possible in the DLC. From here, again, for new game, you will want to rinse and repeat by using Thanos Infinite, by setting up these Soul Siphon areas that or all of your opponents get drawn into. Again, that just makes things a lot quicker in the combat side of things for getting through these trickier encounters, especially where the opponents spawn in here, as well as in various portions of the actual run. Now we have the final boss fight of this area, where we have Red Skull and Hela here sharing Odin's throne, which is a very peculiar place for them to be out of context, but within the context of the story, it does make a fair amount of sense. So now we have a combat against Red Skull primarily, which is one of the easier boss fights in the game, and then we have a pivot over to the one of the more difficult boss fights, which is the Destroyer Armor. Now, there are a couple of quirks that make that a little bit easier, and so we will kind of talk our way through that as we get into the context of that fight. You can skip through that cutscene, I just didn't have a need to until right now. And so let's go ahead and make our way through this. Again, in a new game format, it's going to be a lot easier with Black Panther, who can basically one-shot that, and even here into the second portion of this fight, Black Panther will do really well with that Vibranium Slash as well. Apart from that, you're just going to want to pick somebody who hits hard and can shrug off some of these retaliation hits from Red Skull, because he cannot be staggered while he has this aura around him. He can still take damage, but he cannot be staggered while he is in that state. You then have a cutscene that you can skip. Hela puts Red Skull's soul in the Destroyer Armor, which is not particularly fun. And you can't do a whole lot in this initial phase of the fight because the Destroyer has a lot of physical resistance to oncoming attacks, as well as having attacks that take up large amounts of the restricted arena here. Now, what you'll need to do is wait, or get as much damage in as you can, and then make as much priority as possible with all of these crystals that are dropped by the grunts that are summoned into this fight, because that allows you to actually deal damage to his stagger gauge, as well as increase damage to the Destroyer and its health bar as well. Here we have another cutscene that you can skip, which leads immediately into a second cutscene that you will need to skip, a dialogue section that you can skip through with Odin, and upon talking to Odin, you will be teleported into the last section of the game. Now, I highly recommend doubling back to this shield emblem for a new game run, and making sure that you have made any final adjustments that you want. You can also take some time and break all of these chests, because again, in a new game run, there's going to be a lot of really good stuff contained here within that is going to help you out in your battle. So break the chests, double back to the shield emblem, and make sure that your team is ready to go for the long haul of the boss rush gauntlet that takes place in Nowhere and the final section of the game, the Heart of Infinity. But that's everything that I needed to cover for today. If you enjoyed today's video or found it helpful, make sure that you leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe for the daily variety content, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.